Hello and welcome to Agents Across the Pond. Now, this is a podcast where UK agents and US realtors talk honestly about what works, what doesn't, and everything in between. Now, this isn't a podcast where we just talk about the hype of property. It's real conversations about sales, lettings, marketing, and let's be honest, that little bit of therapy that we all need when running an estate agency. Now, today is a little bit different. We've got our first guest on the podcast. We've got Hayley from Iron Property, and that's a UK-based auction house with national coverage. My name's Liam
I'm Daniel
Gretton.
Smith.
I'm Amanda Smith.
All right. Yeah, so Liam is having a couple
And
of
like I say, we've got Hayley who's come along and joined us.
it's okay, Liam. We're having some technical difficulties here today. And Liam has been in and out all morning as we've been trying to set up for the podcast. So if we've been jumping over him there for a second,
A little
it's
glitchy.
just a little bit glitchy for some reason or another. We're having problems today. But we have Hayley has come on and we've come to talk about a lot of different things. That in the US, we just seem that we don't really have a market where auctioneers are involved in real estate transactions. And when they are involved, it tends to be for, we would say, it's a distressed property or bank sales or foreclosures.
Yeah.
And we're trying to learn a little bit from the US realtor side, how Hayley implements her business with UK real estate agents and what sort of the process looks like. So, Hayley, when it comes to you getting involved in transactions with real estate agents, what is sort of the first steps that come in to get you involved in a transaction?
So we have partnerships with about 7,000 agents across the UK at the moment. So it's a white label service as well. So we're not advertising as I am sold to going out to get vendors listed with ourselves. We're talking to estate agents and saying to vendors, saying, speak to your vendors, ask them why they're selling, try and really understand the reasoning of why and be able to offer your clients choice. So we offer both modern auction and traditional auction. So there's two routes. So we just say to agents, look, give your clients choice, have the tool in your toolkit and talk about it. Understand for them, are they selling for divorce, debt, deceased estate, care home fees, those sort of reasons. Not always property driven. So probably 95% of what we do is modern auction, which is conditional sale.
Hmm.
And probably about 5% of what we do is traditional auction, which is what most people will know in the UK is very much Homes Under the Hammer, the popular TV program.
Yeah.
It's very much property driven. So if it's unmortgageable, is it cash buy only? And we sell it that way.
Okay.
Both auctions done by us are very much done online, like eBay. So
Okay.
not in the traditional room, all online. Um, we have
And
no restrictions to people registering to buy with us as well. We ask for very few details up front, just their basic name, address, telephone numbers, email address. They can view the property online. They can go and view it in person with the agent. They can download the legal pack. So we do all the legal work up front. The
it,
difference.
sorry, I had a question. I found it interesting. And does that operate similar to how like an eBay transaction works, like with a time limit and get your offers in by a certain time frame?
It really does. The
Okay.
biggest difference is in the last 2 minutes, the last 2 minute timing, if we get a bid, the timer starts again, so it doesn't allow shill
Um,
bidding.
that makes
So
sense.
sometimes we might have an auction run 20 minutes over. It might be just done there and then, but we have
That's
loads of flexibility with it.
yeah.
So traditional auction, they immediately exchange contracts with completion within 28 days.
Mhm.
With modern, there's more flexibility. So 65% of all modern purchases will be done with some form of mortgage. And when the hammer goes down and the solicitors get the contract, they've got 56 days to exchange and complete.
Okay. So the time frame, there's never any issues with like time frames, or do the buyers ever back out of deals, or have you ever had situations like that before?
Yeah, 95% of sales will go through on modern. With
Yeah.
traditional, it's more like 99% because they immediately exchange. I think
Okay.
in all the time I was an estate agent for 25 years before I think I lost one sale after exchange, so it doesn't tend to happen. So that's why if the more certainty is the traditional auction. But to get a better price, it's a hybrid between being on the open market, private treaty or traditional sale.
Yeah. So that's when you're working with an agent alongside you. And does it typically work that the agent sort of reaches out to you to bring this to the table for their clients?
Yeah, so when we go out and agree to partner with an agent, we'll go in and do full training with their team.
Hmm.
So they're comfortable to talk about it and agree to the conversation. So so the agent will technically do the viewings and the marketing, and then we do everything else.
Okay.
So get the property listed with us. If an agent's on the market already, their contract will just pause and ours sits on top. We'll send the agreement out. They'll do the marketing and viewings. Just need some wording in their advertising, and then we do everything else: the viewing feedbacks, the negotiation, the sale agreed to completion. And with this route, the vendor doesn't pay a selling fee either to either us or the agent.
I was going to ask, it sounds like you guys help with educating the agent as well on how to have conversation with their clients or the seller
That was my next
of
question.
of like how to have the conversation because my view here would I think of it as like not necessary. I think of it as like a last resort sometimes for some of these sellers, but we
I agree.
wouldn't want to pose it in that kind of way to them. So it sounds like you guys educate the agent to have a better understanding of the process and propose it to their client in a
Yeah.
more strategic kind of way that supports them versus feel more urgency to it.
I was going to ask Liam as well, and just to bring him in, like, how
Yeah.
does he propose it? Like, what does he bring into the table to suggest this to his clients?
Well, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know whether you were pausing for too long there because it cut out. But so the way I look at it, and I've got questions that I kind of want to throw on the table as well. As I look at it, there's three ways of pricing a property. We've got aspirational, we've got market value, and then we've got event-based pricing. But then at the same time, I do think if you have a Van Gogh painting, where are you going to take that painting to sell it? And it's going to be an auction route. But I think over the last maybe 20 years plus, um, and it may come from places where if you want to sell a property, you go to auction, but people automatically think that, well, I've got to discount it and I'm leaving money on the table. I don't want to do that. Hayley, obviously, I know we're both in the same country. As Brits, we absolutely love TV programs like Homes Under the Hammer. I
Yeah.
think it's great, but that's had a bit of a negative impact on what an auction act is.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. So we talked to the agents about maybe not using the A word. So we've got three ways of selling your house. We've got open market, talk about the elephant in the room. We've got traditional auction, very much homes under the hammer, but your house is far too nice for that. But we've also got our hybrid route, which is our secure sale method. So it's because sometimes as soon as you say the A word, as Liam will say, people think they know what it is and just say, no, 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 I'm not interested.
Mm-hmm.
When the client does speak to us, then we do identify what it is. And it is our modern auction and it's an education piece. When you educate clients, they understand it.
Do you think that?
What are sort of some of the
Sorry, go on.
biggest bar? Sorry, Dan. My signal as well, mate. I'm looking at you guys, and just so everyone knows, I'm pretty sure Dan, Amanda, and pretty sure Hayley would have jumped in and said how bad my connection is today. So if I am jumping in, sorry.
Go
I've
ahead.
lost my food of thought as well. Lost my food of thought.
Oh, so I'll
I'm
just
up.
jump in.
Yeah, go on,
How
mate.
how do the auctions impact days on market then? So, or do you have like, so Liam, you may list the property and it might not be the route that you choose yet, and then you go and say, hey, there's this hybrid route. Whilst we're on the market, we could bring it to the hybrid auction route. does it affect like how long the property's on the market? Because then if you're doing like an eBay sort of situation, where there's a timeline and offers are getting put in and they're bidding on homes, I guess then that kind of puts a definitive timeline on it. So how does that affect everything? So because obviously Liam might have a house on the market, or any agent might have a house on the market for that matter, and they might bring up this or suggest this hybrid model that you just talked about before.
Yeah.
um you have a definitive timeline then, don't you, when you put it out onto the auction and there's a bit, so like I guess like, and
Well,
then how does it affect the seller's mentality? Not that we're focused on like sellers at the moment, but like their mindset of like, oh, I want to be at this price, and if we don't get that price, obviously there's cut-offs that you have, but
yeah.
how does that sort of all marry together in terms of the timing that it takes to get the process done, but also like how many days on market, and then if they don't reach their price at the auction, what's the next steps as well?
Okay. So when we're talking to a vendor about potentially going down this route, we're sense checking. We're asking the financial needs, the drivers for selling. There is a plan B, the emotional needs, and really probably digging a lot deeper than a typical estate agent would do to really understand the reasoning why. To check the motivation is correct, because we need to make sure we're doing the best thing for the clients, because we are representing estate agents. The relationship is more important than that one transaction. So we've got to look at it as a whole. But when we speak to a vendor, we're looking at selling it within a 4-week period. When we instruct, we have to get an auction pack. So we do all the legal work up front. So we're usually turning that around in about 10 days at the moment, as we do them in-house. So the vendor will set a reserve price. That's our worst case scenario. And then we'll set a guide price up to 10% less.
Okay.
We will, on the initial call, we'll say to a vendor in 2 weeks' time, we're going to review that if it's not sold, if we set the auction line. And I think where we differentiate ourselves to other auction providers is each auction timeline is bespoke to each property. So most traditional auction houses will run a set auction as 28 days. As soon as it comes into auction, it'll run for 28. But Liam and you will know time can kill a deal. If we've got 2 people that want to buy it, why don't we run an auction for 48 hours? Or if we've got a few people viewing it, we might run it for 2 weeks. We speak to the vendor about pricing all the way up until the hammer goes down as well. So if the vendor say set the reserve at 250,000, but the bids are indicating they're going to end around 240, we're going to ask the vendor up until literally 30 seconds before the auction, and can we bring that reserve price down? Because don't forget, that's not the advertised price. So it doesn't stop it going in excess of that, but it just means if it reaches the 240, when the hammer goes down, it sells.
Makes sense. And my next question then is the type of people that you need. What are you looking for in the people that need to take this route? You know what I mean? What kind of personality and motivation is best suited to go down this path of auction?
What are you noticing as most common?
Yeah, we find it's where they need speed and security. Probate, so death in a family is a big driver, because a lot of properties now pay property taxes or council tax straight away on an empty property. If there's mortgage repayments that needed to repay, or equity release, anything like that, where they're going to start paying out the longer it's set on. And is it 140 days is average completion timescale on private treaty at the moment, Liam, about that?
Yeah, it is quite lengthy. Naturally, I think we should be a bit more like the US, because you guys seem to do it super fast. But in the UK, that sale agreed, start the conveyancing and getting right the way through. With some solicitors, it could be really long. I think the longest one I've ever had is, I think it was actually about 8 months by the time I completed. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah. So we do all the legal work up front with the auction pack. So literally, when a buyer agrees to buy it, their solicitors only need to do pre-contract inquiries. That is it.
A unique question then is, have auctions ever outperformed like your average market, like your average real estate professional? Do you think that they could have ever outperformed it?
Yeah, I think I talked about probates, care home fees, those sort of reasons. I think estate agents instinctively don't always think that auction is the best route, because they'll think, well, I can put it on the open market, I can sell it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure Liam and I could tell many stories where we've gone to the best in finals or sealed bids, and somebody's either come back and said, I would have paid more for that, or can you tell me what the offer is, or the sales fallen through. So the best performing properties are the ones where the agent doesn't actually need us.
Mm-hmm.
That are fresh to the market. It might be a bungalow on a very popular street that doesn't come on very often. It's a retirement sort of area. And putting that on the open market and letting the market dictate what it's worth. And it's great. I had a great example. I had one in Lancashire. It was on at 275,000. We had no interest. I suggested we reduced it to 225, and the vendor was like, no. She agreed eventually. I sold it for 285,000, and I had 22 bids on it. One of the bidders had gone into the estate agency office the day before and said, look, I'll pay for 250 for it. I'm not paying any more. The vendor's being ripped off by the auction house. And the agents rang me panicking. I said, just wait, because I could see the registered bidders. I could see the auction back views. He said he wouldn't pay a penny more. He went to 275 and lost out. So I think what buyers say they're going to pay and what they do pay when they get in that frenzy is two different things.
Mm-hmm. The emotion takes over, right?
Yeah.
Emotions versus logic. And Danny, do you have this kind of auction set up in the US?
So I was talking about this just briefly before the podcast started because of all of our technical issues. We don't usually have this type of like a third, let's call Hayley's business a third party involved in a transaction. Usually most of these things happen when a property gets foreclosed on, it's a distressed sale, and then it goes to like sheriff's auction. So every town here has their own like courthouse, and they set dates for properties that get foreclosed on to go up for auction in the sheriff's, it's called a sheriff's auction. That's typically the process of any kind of auction here. The only other way that we do it is it's kind of still on the open market, is when we have a high, right now, especially in our market right now, we've got lots of homes still, going over asking price. I mean, I just showed a home last week, and they had 25 offers on that house. The agent calls for best and final, and that is ultimately the agent creating their own bidding war between those 25 people who've presented offers, and then saying to them, like, listen, we've got 25 offers. You guys go out there and give us your best, right? We've got 25. We've got to decipher which one's the best. You send us your best offer, and that's your last opportunity to do so. And that's the only way that we kind of drive an actual bidding war without having the time frames which Hayley's been presented, which I think actually could be super beneficial if there was a business model over here for someone to come in and say, hey, we want to start talking to realtors who have got multiple offers on their homes. And instead of you just asking for best and final, why don't you do exactly what Hayley's done, which is create your own little like site auction, and you have the home come on, you put the house on there. People could have viewed it with their agent, like you said, the hybrid model, which is a great, seems like a great model to be honest, from everything you've explained to me, because people still get to physically see the house. Versus, the opposite, where they're seeing it online and just looking at pictures. Then from there, it would be fantastic, because you might even push the price even higher, because you don't know how many times I've done best and final with clients.
Yeah.
And then someone makes their offer, and then you accept an offer, and then we go into this phase called attorney review, and then someone else will submit another offer after the fact.
Can you share the figures you've had as well, the offers you've had or not in the States?
We don't typically share the offer with other people. Like, so someone's offered a price, which is also another great point.
We can't do it on the open market either, Liam will tell you. But this way we can do.
Yeah.
And we shout about what bids there is. From a client's perspective, it looks like any other house on the open market. It's just when it comes to bidding is the biggest, that's the difference.
Everyone sees what everyone's offering.
And the buyers are paying a non-refundable reservation fee. So they've got some skin in the game.
Yeah.
So they can't just walk away like they can do on the open market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I wonder the legality of it over here if we had a similar model put into place. Because, like I said earlier, it feels more like for closed properties, and like when the bank takes over ownership over here is what I think of initially for
Just remembered
um
something.
when we think of going to auction for things. But this sounds like the way that it's strategically used over by you guys is more of a strategy to help the seller get the most for the house, despite the
I think
um,
that's absolutely nailed that, Amanda.
yeah, like a different kind of strategy. And like Danny's saying, I'd be curious what it could look like over here if this third kind of party option was a thing and how that would change the
I'm
market.
I'm amazed there that like we've been talking about auctions and that you guys are saying like this model isn't really where you guys are. Like Danny, you lost me when you said sheriff auction because to me a sheriff's a police officer. Like why is he doing all this? Has he
And
not got better stuff to do?
That's just the name that they...
maybe we're just not knowledgeable of different resources that are out there because we don't have a
I guess if it
relationship with somebody that
yeah,
has experienced this, I guess.
I actually come to remember right at the very beginning of my real estate career here back in like 2018, there was a website called Hubzu, and I just pulled it up right here next to me now, which is an auction site, and I actually remembered putting in an offer on this site. So it kind of does operate similar from what I'm looking at here, but I just would
Yeah,
say that it's not very prevalent. And then everything is bank owned right here that I'm looking at. I'm just scrolling through properties that are on it, right? And
yeah,
everything is bank owned, and it's basically being resold there. But again, it also shows homes that are in foreclosure as well. But yeah, it's not something that is widely talked about. Even in our brokerages, we have broker meetings every week, and it's never
yeah,
really brought to the table as something to consider. You know what I mean? And it should
interesting.
probably be more widely talked about because it's definitely a great avenue, especially like you said, when you get to shout about the price that you're getting for your clients as
yeah,
well.
Hmm. Haley, obviously you've been with Iron Property now for a little while. What are some of
yeah.
the biggest misconceptions you've found? Obviously, you've got that estate agency background. The misconceptions that you find now being within that auction circle and coming to speak to estate agents, realtors, as the US guys call it, to build up that partnership.
I think they just don't get it themselves. I think agents get in a rut doing the same thing. I know in 2008, as an agent, I did a bit of modern auction and it kept my doors open and paid some of the staff salaries. But I thought I knew everything. And
Mhm.
it's interestingly in the EXP brokerage that the newer agents to EXP are using this, but the existing agents don't tend to use it because they've got their pitch. They don't feel they need it. But are they giving their clients the right choice? Are they giving them the option? And I say to agents, look, talk to your clients about it, let them pick, because then the fee becomes a second conversation. Rather than fee being one of the first things vendors want to know as soon as you go through the door, why don't you ask them which service do they want, one, two, or three? When they've picked, then the fee you're going to charge becomes a secondary conversation. And actually, are you not offering a better service for your client? And actually, if you offer it, you might find that most agents, the private treaty listings will increase because they're giving service to the clients. And as I say, I think most of the reason the agents don't do it is they just don't get it or they don't believe in it. They don't think buyers should pay a
So
fee.
how which I get to some extent, and from an agent mindset, maybe it's I'm losing out on this, and it's my property, I've got the
Control
lead,
thing.
and it's my little baby in this moment. What are the barriers, and how do you overcome them to get the agents on board? Because you've used a great example there. Obviously, EXP is a massive brokerage just across the globe. I know you guys are fully aware of EXP. I know you're going to come over at some point. You've just not openly said it yet. But how do you get these agents to get across that barrier and buy them into the auction route?
So for new to EXP, a great one I talk about is cash flow. So Liam, how long did it take you to get your first completion when you joined EXP from Sale Agreed? How many months in were you before you got money in the bank?
Honestly, it was actually, so I remember it was just over a year.
And how sustainable is that for most people to go 12 months without a salary?
Oh, it's not at all. And interestingly, what I feel like I know where you're going. So for the listeners out there, me and Hayley were in North Wales yesterday. We're a part of a group called Agents Boardroom, and it's just a good place where good estate agents, good people meet up. We have a walk, we have a chinwag, we grab a coffee. And what really stood out to me yesterday, Hayley, as we were sat down having some lunch, there was another agent who said, "I'm glad I sent this property over because it paid my mortgage that month."
And she was an existing agent that you think that would be doing well, but
Yeah.
her pipeline was so congested that nothing was coming out and she needed some cash flow. So for something like that, something so basic, if an agent sent us a listing today and they listed straight away, they could be paid in 2 to 3 weeks' time. So compared to putting a house on the market,
a month.
you could not get paid on it for 6 months, and that's if it goes through.
Yeah, that's. I mean,
Yeah.
we've talked about this before. I mean, our market moves like a lot quicker than your traditional, so that's kind of a really good incentive for agents in the UK,
Yeah.
to want to sort of look at that as an option. So I think honestly, the one thing I always try and talk about as well is in real estate, it's like you've got loads of different tools, and you've got to pick the right tool for the right
Yeah.
project. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, I always talk about it from an investing standpoint as well. Like, oh, like, listen, I want to invest in a project. What kind of project is it? Is it a fix and flip project? Is it a buy and hold and rent project? Is it, from your perspective here, do I need to get an auctioneer involved in selling this property for a client for it to be successful? And you've got to try to work that out as a real estate professional, what the best path might be. And that's where your value comes in. So identifying that and sort of being able to suggest it in the right way to your clients is really important. And then the side, like you just mentioned there, the speed side also comes into it too. Like, if you can sell a house really quick and that's what your clients need, that's the route that you really should be taking.
And the buyers like it as well.
Yes.
That's what I was gonna say. For the not only for the agent, it sounds like they get their, commission check quicker, but also the seller gets their money back, and the buyer gets into the new home much quicker than it sounds like the regular traditional route over there.
I would sell it like a VIP service to a buyer. If you can we do all the legal work up front, so you can see that property, get your survey done, get your solicitor to review the pack. You can have the property off the market and not get gazumped on it, and you've got a guarantee it's going to get in that timeline. Where how many times has buyers said they've been messed around by vendors? Look, if the vendor pulls out, we can just refund the buyer the fee anyway, because it's not their fault they've pulled out, so we'd refund on that basis. So for a buyer to have that security themselves, to know they can have that, and my boss has a really good wording: in an uncertain market, we sell certainty. So we can guarantee that that's when they're going to be moved by.
Yeah.
Are there circumstances or specific types of properties that wouldn't be able to go this route as a strategy, or is it like any property an agent could make the connection with you?
I think BSA is trickier, which are apartment buildings with cladding issues. I think apartments or tenanted properties in general, if the yield needs to stack up because the investors are buying it. So we tend to be looking around a 9 to 10% yield for it to work that way. The best ones are the new to the market vacant stock. So that's the ideal, but we can work with pretty much anything. We've sold beach houses, we've sold garages, we sell land, we sell commercial units. So if it's a property of some form or land, we can sell it. As long as the vendor's realistically priced, the market will dictate what it's worth. At the end of the day, we paid our partner agents £45 million last year, and we sell around 1,000 properties a month. Iron Property as a business did 1.5% of all property transactions last year.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
But people don't know the name because we white label it and it's the agent's name above the door.
Hayley, how many buyers come along to the auction route? And I do think it's a slight barrier in the UK. Obviously, buyers aren't used to paying a fee to purchase a property, where in the US, that's very normal. You pay your buying agents. So to me, that's a slight barrier. But how many buyers on average would you say are actually buying with a mortgage? Are they still able to go down that route? Or
so 65% of all our modern auctions are sold with a mortgage.
Wow.
So
that's a lot higher than I thought.
And we do have loads of flexibility. So if we have one vendor wants to sell it and a buyer that wants to buy, and we might sell it pre-auction to a buyer that hasn't got the reservation fee. First time buyer wants to buy it, but they've only got their 10% mortgage deposit. You would probably think they can't buy it. We would restructure the deal. We'd inflate the purchase price and put, rather than paying a reservation fee, we would pay a deposit, and it's sent a client and hold an account, and it's just a moving in money. If there's somebody with a chain buyer, if they're the only buyer, we'll put a deal structure together. So there's loads of flexibility with what we offer. What we offer is not a one size fits all. It's a bespoke for a vendor and for an agent.
So even if they were to even if they were utilizing a mortgage to purchase, they still could be in that quicker timeline.
Yeah.
Then what's going on with the traditional route? Why does it take so long? That's so crazy.
Yeah, why does it take
every time? I'm like, I think it's mind blowing the length of time that it
we just closed the transaction yesterday, Hayley, and from the day we met our clients, which was February 28th, that was our initial consultation with the buyer, and it took us from that initial consultation pretty much like 6 weeks to find him, 5 weeks to find him a property that he won an offer on. And then we just closed on it yesterday. So it took him like another 4 or 5 weeks then to go through the entire mortgage application process, inspection of the house to make sure it's in a fitting condition, negotiating any issues that needed to be renegotiated, and then obviously getting him to the closing table and doing the walkthrough yesterday. So it took us from the day we met him, and not every transaction is this fast, but it took us roughly 60 days from just an initial consultation to going and viewing houses to getting to the closing table. Whereas that, I mean, not that many people are going through that process with buyers in the UK, but that's a fast process considering you're going through all of the education of what it takes to buy a house. There's no one really educating buyers on how the process works. And like they're walking into it blind and they're like not knowing, especially first time home buyers anyway, right? Like it's like no one's giving them insights of like, what are the steps I need to take to make this smooth and comfortable and a nice experience. Because I think I've heard, in fact, this is words from a friend who's just bought a house in the UK. I never want to buy a house again. This is the most stressful process of my entire life. And I just
it should be the most exciting.
Exactly.
They're not using Liam, by the way. That could be why.
That is the exact reason why.
And pre-COVID, it was a lot quicker as well. And pre-2008, it was quicker. I used to quote 6 to 8 weeks for completion because that's what it used to be.
We're kind of pushing on to that 90-day window, aren't we? If not a little bit more. Hayley, what's your advice to agents who aren't entertaining conversations at the moment?
Why? What have you got to lose to have a conversation and understand the process? Because
what's the for that agent, what are they potentially missing out on by not being open-minded to a conversation?
I think if they're a good agent and they pride themselves on service with their agents, are they offering their clients the best choice? Are they letting them choose? When a sale falls through, or property's about to reduce, or you're ringing a vendor on a weekly basis and saying, I've got nothing new to tell them, why wouldn't you have another conversation about something else? And look, it's not going to be right for everybody. It's going to be decent agents will do about 10% of their listings would be suitable for this route as a sort of a rule of thumb. Some will do 15, 20, some will do 5%. There's all that sort of flexibility. but not being able to offer your clients choice. We don't always know what's going on. How many vendors don't tell you if they've lost their job or they've had a terminal diagnosis. And from when they list it to when they actually agree a sale or when they withdraw it, their circumstances might have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I know we've this week we've not really gone into the detail of for yourself how the US operates, but I'm pretty sure you got a good idea how they operate in general.
Yeah, in general, yeah.
In general. Now, if this isn't really a thing out there, what would you say to the US realtors that are potentially listening to the podcast who are sat going, right, I want to generate more business. I want to be able to collaborate with people where I can maybe take a step back, someone else can take over. What advice would you give to them? Because we are in a slightly different market and a totally different market and how we operate if you listen to the last episodes. But to me, this podcast was always about what can we do that the US are doing and what can the US do that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I love this setup because, like you say, it's a lot easier. You get paid faster. It's cash flow. But the US agents aren't necessarily doing this.
Yeah. Time frames, though, with the US, that's slightly different as well. They turn things around quicker. And you set,
So how can we make
a time date, don't you?
I think most of the properties that don't sell are tend to be then in a distress. Like there's a house that's located by us and you think it's listed appropriately, or you think it's listed appropriately, but it hasn't moved. Well, why is that? And we have other issues that are going on which make people scared of buying some properties, especially here in New Jersey. We have like underground oil tanks, which I've previously talked about, which people, when you hear that there's an underground oil tank on a property, they get worried because of the health and environmental issues that can come along with it if it's had a leak. And that can be a very costly purchase if you purchase a property that's got an underground oil tank and it's leaked. Now you've just inherited a huge liability. And you want to make sure that that's taken care of before you acquire a property, which could be what's going on with this property that I'm talking about. It's local. It's in one of our buyers' price ranges. It's something that he would consider, but it's like, why? And we're trying to get the answers to why the house hasn't sold, why people aren't interested in it. But I had an interesting question because I always find that like when we start to speed the process up, mistakes can potentially happen. Do you ever feel like because you're doing an auction, because buyers don't have representation about what they're purchasing in this process for you guys, do you ever feel like that the surveys could miss things because of the speed that things got, or does it always 9 times out of 10 run smoothly?
9 times out of 10 it runs smoothly. We really track our customer service and NPS scores and all that sort of stuff. So we make sure that our CSAT scores, our Trustpilots and NPS scores are a high rating. So when every sale agreed, we ring a vendor to get the feedback, and the same with the buyers, and do that on completion as well to check that our processes are correct. If we find any flaws, that there seems to be more issues being arisen at that, we'll look at it and see what we can do to mitigate that risk happening again in future. All our calls are recorded. All our auction specialists, who are like the negotiators, are trained on a weekly basis. If new legislation comes out, we talk to them about new legislation. If there's any change on the interest rates, they're all taken off the phone and talked to about that. So when they're talking to clients, they've got all that knowledge and experience to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if there's an issue, it's normally from a training perspective that the auction specialist or with the estate agent not had the full knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was going to say.
Sorry, Amanda.
I feel like it's the education piece. At least for me, I'm sitting here like I want to learn more about this in our industry here, as how we could potentially, if it's an option to utilize, as like you're packaging it as like part of a strategy when you're going to a listing appointment, as just another one of the options for the seller to consider versus certain circumstances brings you to this option versus it's just one of the things that one of the routes we could take. So I guess for me, it's wanting to educate and learn a little bit more about whether or not it's present here and how much it could be involved in the way that we're working, as just an additional level or option when we're working with clients.
As business for us, it's all about education and training. And that's where we differentiate ourselves, that we don't launch an agent till they've had full training. And it's a constant training process with them. We have bite-sized online training, we have in-person training, we have documented training. So whichever way they want to learn the process, we'll work with them to understand their needs.
I like
That's
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Hayley, obviously our colonial cousins across the pond decided to get involved with Old Persia. How have you noticed that effect on the auction market?
In an uncertain market, this is what I said before, it's certainty. So we're talking about there's less mortgages available and things like that. It lends into it. There's more properties on the open market than there has been previously that are not selling. So yes.
I mean, we're kicking on, and I wanted to ask a question before we get to the end of the podcast that was like a story-based question for you, Hayley. Like, so I was going to ask, like, what's like one of the most surprising auction results that you've ever seen, and like what made that like happen, sort of thing?
I just picked one out. It wasn't the most surprising one, but it was just a really great example. So it was one up in Cumbria. The agent, who's the largest EXP agent, had never used us for auction before.
And
So
Hayley, we should also add to this. When Hayley says he's the biggest EXP agent, it's not solely in the UK. Mark Buchanan up in Carlisle, out of over 100,000 agents who partner with EXP in Carlisle, the arse end of the Roman Empire, he sells more properties than anyone. But he will not pump it out there. He will not sing and dance about it. Incredible bloke. I needed to throw that in. He really is. He's a really good guy.
That's wonderful.
So he gave us an auction listing and said, we'll speak to this vendor, see if you can have a conversation. So it was on the open market for £150,000. The sale had fallen through. The vendor was despondent. Mark passed it over and said maybe the vendor should set the reserve around 115,000. My colleague Annabelle spoke to them and really dug into it. The vendor actually owed 60,000 on the property. So when Annabelle challenged and said, why do you need a reserve of 115,000? Would it not be better to try it a bit lower? The vendor agreed and said, look, as long as I clear my 60k mortgage, it was my sister's property who passed away, and there was a £4,000 in funeral expenses, I can go lower. So she agreed a reserve price of 80,000. Annabelle did with the vendor. We put it on with an advertised price of 75,000. Mark conducted 16 viewings on the property. Online, it had 1,300 views on it. It sold. It had 45 auction pack downloads. It had 76 bids on the property. It sold for £135,000.
That's fantastic.
So
that's a good result, isn't it?
Wow.
It was on at 150 on the open market. They probably would have taken 140 on the open. Okay, they're not paying council tax for an extra few months. The mortgage company was charging an extra £5 a day on top for every day it was empty. So those costs, it was exchange completed within 8 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, super.
The vendor could step away, and the emotional need and going back to a house, it was his sister's. It was dealt with
in a speedy time frame, which just probably was a relief for him as well, the seller, right?
Yeah. Well, I think obviously, as you said, Dan, we're kicking on a little bit. I think this week it's been really good, Hayley, and thank you very much for coming to join us, especially as the first guest on the podcast. For me, I always find it interesting to hear kind of other people's perspectives. Guys, I know obviously you're across the pond at the moment and you've probably learned something. Just so everyone knows, we are actually looking to raise investment so we can go and launch this business out in the US.
I was gonna say, let's get it over here.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a market there. But Hayley, really appreciate the time today.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me on. See you later.
No problem. Thank you very much.
We're not finished yet, Hayley. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please leave a comment, a like. Make sure you share it. We really appreciate the time that everyone's taken to listen and engage with us. We will be back next week with another episode. I think we're on maybe episode 8 or 9. But again, thank you for joining us, and we'll speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You can pause the recording.